So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we have Joyce here back with us again. You can also watch the other videos that we did together in the links below. So today Joyce is going to be talking about using type to find the divine purpose. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself first and your channel?
Yeah, my name is Joyce Meng, and my channel is called Type Talks, or it's also under my name as well. And divine purpose is a really near and dear topic because I think that a lot of people in life aren't happy. A question that I've been asking a lot to people is, are you truly happy? And most people aren't. So if you are actually truly happy, I would say congrats because you're in a very small percentage of people. And so that's a great thing to feel like you really are making it in life because you have something special that people are still trying to find. And
Yes.
so um I think that everyone has a defined purpose, and sometimes that's just finding a way to embrace all of their neurodiversity. And that's why I find type to be so splendid, because type is the starting place for some of the deepest conversations you will have in your life, because it's conversations about your personality, about your neural differences. And that's just actually very crucial to finding your purpose, because you actually have to honor your entirety, honor your essence. And to do that, you have to understand what that is. And personality type gives us a framework to map a part of our essence, and so that we can live a life that's more congruent to our gifts. And so, really, our purpose work is just living a life where we are innately appreciated for the things that put us into our flow state. And you know if something puts you into your flow state because you feel less depressed, it makes you happier, and there's a dissolution of the self. So you don't feel so much in your ego, but you actually feel like you're able to let go of the worries or insecurities of the moment. And you're really able to just fully embrace the experience that you're going through. And that's, you're in flow because you feel alive, and it makes you go, heck yes. Some things, you get a lukewarm answer from people like, yeah, I kind of enjoy it, but you really like something when you're able to give it a heck yes. And so what I think our divine purpose is, it's the kind of work that we do that helps us transcend the ego. So I think when you hear people talk about transcendence, what you're hearing is that you're talking about someone who is so in their flow state that they're able to feel like they're living in their purpose. And it's going to feel like transcendence because it feels like you're being enveloped, you're being raptured by your interest. It's almost like you are entering the state of oneness because you become a part of your craft, and then you start to feel alive. And I think this dissolution, like dissolving of the self, is the closest that we can get to the sacred. And I know this sounds kind of woo-woo. I'm not really trying to make it sound that way, but it's almost like when you're in your flow state on a more regular basis, it
Yeah.
really helps you get in touch with your full potential. And when you're living in your potential, you feel like you're growing and you're being challenged, and that you're being used to your full capacity. And I think that's what it's like to be fully alive. And that's what it's like to be living in your purpose. And I actually find the reason why people aren't happy is, like, they could be rich, they could have endless funds or endless compliments from other people, or they could have all the fame that they want in the world, but you will still find people who are empty billionaires and the like, because some part of their life they don't feel like they're living completely in their flow state all the time, and they also might not feel like they're being appreciated for their entirety. And when people are only appreciated for sides of themselves, they start to feel fragmented, and so that creates people who don't feel fully happy, because they're not being given the chance to make the most out of the full spectrum of who they are, to be able to embrace the full neurodiversity of their being. And that's why I think personality type is so beautiful, because it gives us a way to appreciate what puts you into your flow, what makes you different. And it's the starting place for one of the most wonderful conversations you'll have in your life. Because just like figuring out that someone has an internal dialogue that is so different than yours, learning about personality type is like learning about the inner monologue. Do you have it or do you not? But times 1,000 or an infinite amount, because you just learn about these little differences you have from other people that are quite dramatic, and you never knew they were there until you started that conversation. And so I think those conversations bring us closer to our purpose, because we need a level of honesty with ourselves to be able to even come to terms with what our purpose is.
Yeah, and that is a very like well thought out answer. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think I think for me and also for many other types, I think we can see like when we go out into the world, like we can see when people are operating with their purpose and people who are not, but it's just hard to kind of like it's like we can feel it intrinsically, but it's hard to like really pinpoint it, and it's hard for us to all embrace it because they are um, challenges within the system that could be potentially, causing this kind of challenge. So, for example, let's say for an ISTJ, like I don't want to be stereotypical, but they really do enjoy, like a lot of them do enjoy accountancy, like that it's a stereotype for a reason, and they do enjoy like finance and all that. So for an ISTJ, for example, to be in those fields, I wouldn't say it's easier because it also requires a lot of time and sacrifice, and but because they are naturally like gifted towards that area, and it is sort of like a socially acceptable model of um like job scope, I guess. It's like more easily encouraged. But for example, for an INFp, let's say wanting to pursue music or something that is a bit um, less stable financially, that could be a lot of like roadblocks in the way. Like, how do they survive while they are trying to find their purpose, right? So there are like questions like this, and which obviously like it's hard to answer in one video, but I'm just wondering, based on your personal experience and also like maybe looking at other people, like what do you think are some ways that people deal with that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of systemic issues that prevent us from being able to live in the places that make us the most happiest. I think that that's why a lot of people are depressed, because they don't get to do the things that make them happy on a very core level. And so a lot of people have low grade dysthymia or depression from constantly living out of their flow state for a very prolonged period of time. And the reason why you have a vague knowing of your flow state, but you don't know exactly what it is it's these things are fuzzy in your mind until you have the chance to articulate them. So you actually need another person to talk it out with to actually know your purpose, because it's not a one-man job. You actually need to be able to have the chance to say it out loud so it seems more real. Because actually, we're conditioned to ignore ourselves on a core level because it's
Yeah.
good for productivity of society. But that in the long term, this creates people who don't feel good with their lives, and then you see people making 360s with their lives, desperately trying to change their life around because they've been unhappy for a very long time, and so they take drastic measures. And so I think that our purposes is also to, like, there's a shared commonality behind our purposes, because you can boil down human needs into very simple needs, as in we all want to grow, we all want to serve a bigger something. So we want to feel like we're contributing to a bigger whole. That's a human need.
Yes.
Because you want to believe that there's a bigger purpose that you can actually serve that bigger thing.
Yes.
Otherwise, you feel like everything you're doing means nothing. And then you can fall into a nihilistic little spiral. So,
like the copy machine
yeah.
feeling, which a lot of people feel. Yeah, because they don't see how they are making that impact visibly.
Exactly. And so oftentimes people need to know that they're making an impact, like you were saying, Tori. And so the reason why I love type so much is it helps us embrace our impact, because we have a very unique set of gifts, and they're typically, you can guesstimate them based off of your type. And
Yes.
oftentimes your environment may not always appreciate your gifts. And so there might be even neural discrimination. You might
Yes.
be the right gift to the wrong address. So the place that you are given to may not appreciate you. So I think a part of your purpose is finding an environment that values you, like creating a space where the entirety of you is actually welcomed, and that you also believe that you're worth it, so that you can actually allow yourself to be in spaces that promote your well-being. So being with people who can actually see, hear, and understand you for your strengths, and they don't try to mold you into a different version of themselves. I think our purpose is to find a community that accepts us too. And we really need that as tribal beings, as inner cavemen. We all have that primordial side of our brain, that amygdala, where a fight or flight or freeze instinct is triggered when we don't have a community that accepts us, because then we feel like we're in survival mode. If we don't have a purpose community, like soul friends or soul community, there's a level of actual, you get triggered on a survival level if you don't
Yeah.
have that. And so a part of even realizing that you have a purpose is being around an environment where that is possible, to acknowledge that you can even have a purpose. Because if you're around people who don't care about your essence, then what will happen is that you'll just ignore it too. But if you're around a community that supports and loves you for the the essence of you, then they'll promote it instead of ignoring it. So that's the lesson of, there are all these hidden diversities within people, and if we're able to really bring it out, we make people feel fully alive, because they can live with all parts of themselves being respected. And so sometimes embracing and loving your life is also being around people who look out for you and try to get you to articulate the kind of life that you would love, without imposing their own version of that onto you. So finding your purpose is also giving yourself permission to recognize what makes you happy. It's quite simple. Oftentimes when you go to psychologists, or you listen to coaches, or you hear self-help advice, they'll tell you what makes you feel lighter and what makes you feel heavier. And it's just simple advice, but it's so true, that these essential things we don't pay attention to, but they are pivotal hints as to what you would feel happiest being immersed in. So I hope
So
that
how
answered your
would
question.
you, yeah, some parts of it. No, it's okay. So I'm wondering, like, but how would you say to people who are facing, like, the more so-called practical difficulties, like if they are not able to use their purpose to have a stable income, for example, which is a really common question. especially for people whose purpose might not be something that gains immediate stability. So, for example, if somebody's purpose is a comedian or or an artist, it usually takes quite a long time, or at least an extended period of time before they can start earning money, which is what I'm hearing. And in that process, it can be very tough, and sometimes you don't even know if this is like your purpose or passion, like whether it can actually generate you a comfortable life. Because I think comfortable life is also really important, right? Like you need to feel like you have a roof over your head, and you are sustaining yourself, and it affects your emotions. So yeah, like I mean, for ntj and stj, it's slightly, I wouldn't say easier, but it's slightly more straightforward, because the kind of things that they tend to go for or are attracted to are usually quite high earning. So especially ntjs. But for the other types, especially for nfps, for example, or even nfjs, like how do you think they can deal with that, like income problem?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So purpose doesn't necessarily have to equate to your work too. Sometimes artists are miserable when they turn their art hobby into their full-time job, because now they don't get to draw the things that they like to draw. They have to draw commissions. And
Right.
so they don't get to do art in the way that makes them happy. So ironically, the thing that they love becomes a thing that they hate. And so you can live in your purpose by just, if you like art, then you can do it whenever you do have free time, or you can even embody art. Your life can be art in how you live it and what you dress. So there are ways of still being in your purpose by meeting the core needs in which you need to be fulfilled. So I think your purpose is way more flexible than just the things that you love. It's almost feeling like what you're the way that you're living, you're proud of it. And so you don't necessarily need to be doing the thing that is like, say, becoming a comedian. If you're funny and you really like to make people laugh, you can make your friends laugh, and that's still, you're serving a purpose to your community or your friendships. And oftentimes those are deeper because your friends are actually people that you've established, that you know them on a very essential level that other people don't. So your impact on them is actually way deeper than possibly a stranger, because you guys actually have a relationship together. But anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is that if you're funny and you enjoy laughter, making people laugh, you don't necessarily need to become a comedian, and you don't necessarily need to base your whole life income off of that. Um, and I think sometimes when we want to have those kinds of jobs that don't pay that well, for some people, it's because they want to make an impact. They feel like they need to leave a legacy. And so they're like, I need to become an artist or an actor, because those are the kind of people that people remember in history. So we're not always doing that because it puts us in our flow state, but because we secretly feel like we want our lives to matter, and we don't feel like our lives are mattering just as they are. And so we feel a need to do some sort of artistic or some kind of job that people admire for the person and the performance that they give. And so, yeah, it's a really kind of convoluted situation. So, like,
Mhm.
there are creative solutions, like the third option that you can pick, where you can actually do art, but not necessarily as work. Sometimes we just have to work for work's sake and find the most tolerable job because we like to have our basic needs met, and we don't like being homeless, which is understandable. There are some people who have quit their really well-paying jobs to pursue their passion, and then they become broke, and so it's not always the best reason, like it's not always the best choice to follow your dreams, because you might actually run yourself into an even worse scenario by pursuing something that may not actually be profitable, because the world runs on money. But purpose can be found in the little things. We don't necessarily need to be in a workplace that gives us it. But if you can make it your workplace in a way where you find it enjoyable, that's a great plus. But people can even, like, let's say you have someone who is a gifted comedian, even if they can't work in that kind of job, they can still make their coworkers laugh. And so I think that that's still them using their gifts. So our talents are very transferable, so we can actually use them in different settings. We don't necessarily need that specific job title. We can actually broaden our scope, is what I'm saying.
Right, but isn't like work where they spend a lot of time there? So I don't know. I always feel like if they are spending majority of their time, and it's not like related to their purpose, like it's sort of it's like a huge part of their life, you know. So it might lead to the unfulfillment thing.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, they can get burnt out from being in that state for a prolonged period of time. I guess what I'm saying is an artist can use their art gift in a job setting that would it you wouldn't naturally assume that that's an artistic setting. So perhaps they're a Starbucks barista that gets to decorate the chalkboard with their special unique art. Like you can find a way, perhaps as you're drawing on people's cups their names, you can like use your artistic abilities to draw a very beautiful flair on those cups. So while you're not really a artist full time, you can use that artistic skill set, your purpose, in a way in which it's more covert rather than overtly in your job description.
Yeah, I also think it's like that's why people have side hustles, right? Like
Yeah, that is
they do it
true.
on the side first and see whether it's a viable option.
Yeah,
And it can grow. I mean, sometimes you never know, like it grows through the years. So like at first it might like let's say if you're trying to sell, I don't know, like sell art that you like to do, and initially it might not be a lot of clients or I mean customers, but then like through the years as you continuously to talk about it and show it on social media, like somebody might just be interested. So yeah, I mean there's a lot, I think there's a lot of venues for that, like and avenues for that. It's just that you like it takes a bit more effort to keep a lookout, like online avenues, offline avenues, yeah, to prevent the being homeless part.
yeah. Sometimes the marketing is a huge issue, but you might have a lucky break if someone notices you, or that you just find a way to blow up. Like people on TikTok, they're able to just with their views, and you can really change your life if you find the right way to promote your purpose work to other people too. And,
Yeah,
and even by pursuing it, you may realize that that actually doesn't make you happy. So through trial and error, you're like, actually, I don't want to be an artist. That makes me miserable. It's like, great, you learned more about yourself. So
so it could direct them to a different purpose. Maybe
yeah,
they want like something else, or
yeah,
maybe they really like art, or I mean it depends on the person.
yeah. Because sometimes people think they can think their way into a purpose. Like if I just keep going my mind, I can figure out my purpose. But sometimes you figure it out through exploration in the outside world, and that you actually haven't tested out your purpose or tried to find it yet. And you don't actually have enough information to piece it together just in your mind alone. And so,
Yeah, it's really, I think it's like people are like a lot of times people are afraid to try because we are sort of like told to just stick to one and just go with it. But like trying is really going to make a very big difference because a lot of people like started out thinking they want to be musicians, but when they realize the kind of work that goes into being one, then they realize they don't really want to be a musician after all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really, I think it is a form of exploration. Um, and what feels good to one person is going to be very different from another person. Yeah, like people are okay with different things, with doing different things.
Absolutely. And so
So people are, as in they didn't need to explore to find. So sometimes they think they want something, but when they look at the actual process, it's very different. So they need
yeah.
to explore to know what they like.
Yeah, that's really well said, Tori. And so sometimes you need to experience it because you need to know all the downsides that come with that thing. Just
Yes.
as loving another person, you know you really love your significant other when you're okay with their flaws too, like even the worst parts of themselves. With the thing that you want to do for your entire life, you also have to be okay with the worst parts of that thing too. As some people say, the shit sandwich, you have to be okay with that portion of it too, because
Yeah,
you
not
just
just the
can't.
glamorous part. It's the
Yeah.
glamorous, I think people, that's another thing I read because I really like the idea of like ikigai, and I think, I mean, I might sound like an idealist, but I think that eventually everyone benefits, like the ikigai is like the ultimate goal for everyone. Like obviously it's going to look very different for every personality type because some personality types like a certain lifestyle that is really fast paced and some don't. So like the kind of roles that we go into is going to reflect that. Like I literally know of people who were in a high paying job. I mean, it's really rare, but they went to become a farmer, which is like the opposite thing. But you never know because people really are built differently. Like they enjoy doing different things. And yeah, so I think like knowing what you like, oh yeah, knowing the reality of what you like, it's very different from um, knowing, I mean, from like a distance because some people like when we want to find our ikigai, in the process of trying to find it, um, we can sort of get attracted to like the glamorous stuff that may not really be what we enjoy the most, or it could be what we enjoy on a part-time basis, but it might not be what we want to do full time. Like some people, they might, like you said, they just like to play music, but they might not be really wanting to be a musician because that's a lot of media attention and crazy fans and like a lifestyle that is like you don't have privacy, and it's very um, high pressure. So like some people maybe they just like part time playing music in bars or something. That's like their extent, so their purpose might be somewhere. I mean, their ikigai might be somewhere else, where something else gives them more flow state than being like a very big star.
Exactly. So there's always a bliss point. There's always that golden medium, that Goldilocks point of where you will enjoy that activity the most. So for some people, they don't want to be a full-time musician. They just want those gigs from time to time and they're happy with that. And actually being a full-time musician will make them miserable. And so having the perfect amount, like not too little and not too much of certain things in our life is also what can make us happy too. I think a part of our purpose too is connection, but that will look different for each person. We have different friend groups that will suit us, or maybe it's not connecting to specific people, but connecting to a higher purpose, whatever that purpose is. But feeling like we have a connection to something that is deeply meaningful to us is important for mental health too. Um, in fact, there are a lot of studies that are coming out now that are saying that depression is not just a chemical imbalance, that it's something else. And it's funny because like science keeps flip-flopping on where it's
Yeah.
standing on this.
Mhm.
But what it's essentially saying is that, possibly depression can come from a source that we can't yet pinpoint. And what I believe that source is we aren't allowed to acknowledge the things that bring us into that state of oneness, that disillusionment of like how to dissolve the sense of self into something that's just so engaging, something that puts us into our flow, where we feel completely immersed into that thing, where we're not feeling like one foot in, one foot out, but we feel like in our entirety is being fully immersed in this thing, into its completeness. That's what helps dissolve depression in a major
Mhm.
way for
Yeah.
some people when it's not genetic.
Yeah, that's so true. So, I would like to know from your, from your journey on a more personal note, like how did you go about finding your purpose and using type and like just, the kind of stages that you went through. Obviously, it's not going to be for most people. I mean, some people are lucky, maybe they found out early. I think those are very, very lucky people. I know
Mhm.
people who are like, they found out and they went for it like when they were barely in school and they have a very like I wouldn't say smooth sailing on the way, but they definitely have a head start, which is a lot better than most people already. But yeah, I'm just curious to know about your journey and how you would advise other people in finding that state, the flow state that you were mentioning.
Yeah. So what I find to be my purpose is my divine design is helping guide people towards their divine design. So helping them figure out their divine purpose. I want to be also the catalyst that helps people understand the nuance of themselves, of life, of the universe. So expanding their thinking. And so that's wildly fulfilling. And how I got to that
Mhm.
was finding people who really cared about getting to know me, and so I was able to talk it out with them too. Because our purpose becomes more real when we can say it out loud, because
Mhm.
then we're like, wow, we can't lie to ourselves. There's no truth that can go hidden when you like there's a saying that there's no truth that can go unhidden if you that can go hidden if you okay wait so I'm trying to get the gist of this. It's kind of like there's no important truth that can go unhidden if it's written down. Like the same thing is through spoken word. If we're able to speak out our purpose, then we're able to know, wow, now I can't deny it. There's no wiggle room for you to ignore yourself. You it kind of when you hear it, you're like, wow, now I can't pretend like this doesn't exist anymore. And so the decision to ignore your own self is taken away from you, because now you're like, it would be insane to forget this knowledge now that you know it. It's just like seeing the color purple. Once you see purple, you can't go back. So once you actually understand your purpose in a way where it's shown to you, then you feel like you can't really go back either. This experience is unforgettable. And so I think we understand our purpose. So my story is I used to work in HR at a law firm and as a supervisor at a fast food restaurant. And I wasn't
Mhm.
really feeling happy about those roles when I used to work in them, because I didn't feel like I got to have the conversations that were meaningful to me, that give me juice, that are the fuel to my being, to my soul. I want to be able to have these questions with or these conversations with people where we're able to really dig into someone's core, which is why I actually want to become a counselor or a therapist, because I want to actually be able to help people figure out their purpose. That gives me purpose, is being a shepherd along someone's journey. And I figured that out because I got to have a taste of it through coaching. So when I had my YouTube channel, people asked for coaching, and so I did it. And then I realized that I really liked the portion of it that was, borderline on therapy, but I couldn't do the full practice because I'm not a therapist. And so I'm like, well, what if I became a therapist? Then I'd actually be able to talk to people about the issues that really matter. And so that almost having a little crumb of your purpose makes you realize how you want the full course. And so that was something that propelled me in that journey. And it's also having mentors along the way who tell you what your strengths are. So sometimes what we're good at can also reflect our purpose too. So maybe you're an artist who needs that one little push to realize that you really want to draw as a side hustle because you had a mentor one time tell you about how your art really touched their heart. And so now that was the final straw that broke the camel's back, the tipping point in which you realized how much you wanted to do this in a more serious way. I think you know your purpose when you can appreciate the endless nuance of the thing. So, for instance, typology never gets boring to me because I can always find a way to appreciate the little nuances of it. So, I never get bored of exploring INFJs because I always find those little notes or these little things that keep making it new and fresh for me. And so I don't get bored once I hit a certain peak because it's just endlessly fascinating to me. And that's how you know you're really passionate about something, that you never hit a plateau. Or if you hit a plateau, it's just because you don't know what to create yet, but it's not that your love for the thing ever dies. And so that's one of the signs, I would say. But yeah, I'll hand it back to you, Tori.
Right. So are you so because I'm still like getting updated on this, but are you like full-time practicing as a therapist?
I am getting my PhD in psychology, so I'm working my way to that. But it's my dream, and I'm trying to make it reality. And so I feel like I'm living in my purpose because I also get to be people's confidant too. So, in a non professional way, I get to play the role of therapist in my friendships. And that's actually fulfilling to me too, that people trust me with their life stories. I'm their vault. So, and I can also provide them insight. I can kind of like, I don't have to experience things to offer my wisdom on it. I can just kind of by proxy understand it through just imagining the scenario in my head and being able to I can almost know how things are like without actually having to go through it, and being able to be in a role where I can help bring people on the right path or offer my insights in that kind of way is still fulfilling. So even if you on paper, like for instance, for me, I feel the best when I'm in a counselor or therapy role, but I'm not a therapist yet. So the next best thing is really just using those skills, but in different capacities. And I'm not allowed to call myself a therapist because I'm not one, but I'm an armchair one, an armchair psychologist therapist.
Yeah. So did you face any like, let's say, financial struggles in the early stages when you switch role? Because you said you used to be in HR and then you were a supervisor. So obviously there would be a transition period, right, when you changed your path completely.
Yeah, there was, but it was the pandemic that caused me to switch jobs. A lot of people actually changed their career path because of the pandemic, because they got laid off from their jobs or they weren't needed, so they were had a temporary suspended or laid off because their services were rendered not needed.
Yeah.
And so that kind of forces people to introspect, right? They're like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm not working now." And so they're left alone in their own mind. And that it's actually given people the opportunity to reevaluate where their life is going. And so a lot of people have started their YouTube channels during the pandemic for that very reason. And so the financial struggles were there, but I also didn't have the choice of going back to my workplace because a lot of the places weren't even hiring for the positions that I was qualified for even. So I was always forced into my purpose. It's like almost sometimes we need to be backed into a corner into the thing that we love so that we finally accept it. And I think that what was encouraging is the people who believed in me as I was starting out. They're like, no, you can do it. And the momentum that it was gaining, the more I invested into it. So I'm very thankful for the people that my channel wouldn't have been what it was without the goodwill of all the people that have helped me along the way. And that actually helped me lean into my purpose because they saw how happy I was in that. Like they saw me when I was in flow and they told me when they saw me in that state. So I I didn't let go of it. I stayed in that state. Because sometimes we need permission to be in flow. Sometimes we need permission
Yeah.
to do the things that make us happy.
So were there any pushback or from your family
Oh
in the
yeah,
beginning?
they hated it.
Oh
My
God.
dad didn't. My dad's like, never show me any of your videos because I'm gonna tell you the truth, and it's probably gonna be something that you don't want to hear. And so he's just like, I didn't even ask him to see my videos. He just knew that they existed, and he just insulted me outright. And
Wow.
my mom likes to tell family members about how, oh, but she's not like a doctor like your child. So, but like if I were a parent, I would love to brag about my kid in whatever capacity, but I find like with my mother, she's just like, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna find ways to knock you down a few notches whenever I can to other people," and I'm like, "Thanks." And then my brother tried to get me evicted, so he's like, "Get
Oh
a
my.
get an actual job in HR, or I will stop paying my part of the rent." And you won't be able to afford your house. And so you will lose the house and you'll be homeless if you do the thing that you love. So I got a lot of pushback. People threatened to take away my resources, their love for me, their acceptance of me. And that's why people don't do the things that they love because
Yeah, it's people don't talk about it, but it's like, yeah, I mean, it's easy to say, pursue, like be like go for your ikigai, but that's really a lot of like in the middle of like doing that, that's going to be a lot of pressure, and it's faced by a lot of people. Like it's really common, even for people who, in the end, they were really successful, but in the beginning, they have to basically um, be willing to, you know, let's say like go against some of the like like it could be people they already know, or people who are close to them may or may not be in support. So I think like it has to be something that we know, like it's not going to be a bed of roses at the beginning. I mean, for some people it is, which is great. Like they just happen to be with a very encouraging group of people.
uh-huh.
But for some people it's not the case, and that's why I think it's so hard for people to really go for that. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of like real life situations.
Yeah. It's almost like being in an abusive relationship. So, because of your attachment to certain people, they almost put you down, or they berate you, or they gaslight you for the things that make you happy. But you still stay in it because you do like the people around you, but they just don't bring out the best in you. It's almost like them being around you, they're encouraging you to stay small because they have a certain image of you that they want to preserve and they don't let you grow because that's scary to them for you to pursue something they might not view as secure or stable. I think that's the issue with like a lot of artists face, or people who have jobs that don't earn traditional salaries, is that a lot of people are going to have these resistances against what you're doing, yet the very love that they're giving you is also killing you. And so at that point, for certain people, you have to choose to cut off your connections. And so it is kind of like leaving an abusive relationship because they're abusive from the words that they say to you, or their expectations that they have of you, because it's really giving you psychological bruises, because it's conditioning you to never follow the things that make you happy. But I
Yeah,
don't
and
mean
sometimes.
to,
Mhm.
yeah, but I don't mean to make little of abusive relationships. It's just a compare, like, I'm not trying to make people feel like I'm making light of abusive relationships.
Yeah, it's not, and I didn't know that you had to go through that with your channel. Because but you are pursuing a PhD, so I think that's already like quite a prestigious like journey. I don't know, in a traditional sense anyway. Like PhD sounds good, right?
Yeah, it's all to get the Asian family acceptance. They don't understand what you're doing, but as long as you have superficial titles that they can brag about, then that's fine.
Yeah. So the PhD thing helped, I guess.
Yeah,
Like, okay, yeah,
my
good.
yeah, my brother only started accepting me when I started to make money in the way that he was proud of. So it's not until you start showing results that people start, like, in a tangible way, in almost a superficial way, that people start to trust you and what you're doing if it's unconventional.
Yeah, and it's tough because at the beginning, obviously, like you have to sort of shoulder the heat or yeah, something like that. Yeah. But you, I mean, the fact that he was okay means that you are earning a good amount anyway.
Yeah, thankfully. So I appreciate to all my coaching and customers. You are the best. You make me
Yeah.
be able to live my dream. So that's the best gift you can give to someone. Permission to live their dream.
Yeah, that is, I think that's like secretly everyone's goal in life, um, whoever they are. And yeah, I think so. Do you coach people on finding their purpose, or is it more on like development based on their personality type? I mean, it can be both, but
So people don't typically come and ask, "Hey, Joyce, can you help me figure out my purpose?" They typically come for more practical purposes. So, like, help me with my relationship, or help me with my career path, or help me with just other personal goals that I have. And then from that, it eventually can lead to, all right, then let's assess your purpose. Why are you even doing this in the first place? Why does it matter to you? And so it starts out with this superficial goal, but when you dig deeper, then you start to get into that. Is the goals that you're reaching for even making you happy? And then it starts to go into, well, why are you doing this all anyway?
yeah, um, yeah. I think career and purpose are to me it's very intertwined.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like I know some people say like it's okay if you um, do it as a like you do your purpose as a side hustle, which is fine in the beginning. But I think eventually, and I'm talking about like decades later, it's like I think ideally it's better to be in a flow state at work because it's going to occupy a lot of your time, like majority of your life, I would say. So even if you find something you can tolerate for like decades, it would be quite tough you to not be in your flow state for like more than half the day. Yeah, so I think it's a really big conversation because I know a lot of people who are like on the brink of quitting or trying to do something and then they don't know. Like they're trying to do a startup, but then they are not making money from the startup either. So it's like they're stuck between, trying to figure out things and really finding a way that really utilize their talents and are able to bring in the results. And it all really ties into this one topic because like not being in the flow state for a really long time is for and you're talking about like many years of someone's life, like that's going to make a huge impact on their relationships and how they relate to people in general.
I would agree. It's so important for people to be living in their flow state in the area where they're spending a majority of their time. Yeah. I would also say that you can find creative ways to be in your flow state. For instance, let's say an ENFJ, the only job they can find is being in McDonald's. And would you
Oh
say that
my,
they're, yeah, maybe
that's
you
rare,
could,
but okay, just a hypothetical situation.
hypothetical scenario. Of course, this is never going to be the case, but they can find a way to still be in their flow state in this job. Like maybe they like making people feel good, and their purpose is making people have a smile on their face. So what they could do at their McDonald's job is give people an extra swirl when they like order ice cream, or like remember their name, or like remembering things that matter to them. So they're like, wow, she remembered my order. I matter to her. So being able to touch people's hearts, even in the capacity that you're given. So it may
Yeah,
not be the most ideal place to have your ENFJ strengths, but you can work with it. You can find ways to put your personality into your career, even if it's not overtly some career that is meant for your personality. So
yeah,
you're not condemned to a lifetime of suffering if your career doesn't fully align with what you love, because there's some flexibility for you to build in things that make you happy into it.
yeah. And I think they can like, it's like a process. Like they can try to enjoy the process while sort of keeping a lookout for, you know.
Yeah, you can see this as the current ship that you can jump onto another ship if you find a better one. So it's like, bye bye, I'm abandoning you once I find a better one, but I'm gonna appreciate this ship for all it's worth, this process. But yeah, feel comfortable with jumping ship and finding another one if it doesn't suit you. Like, don't treat your current situation like an abusive partner where you feel attached to it for some reason. So you feel like you have to stay in a bad, toxic situation. You can find happier, greener grasses. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to feel like what you contribute is good enough. And you'll find that kind of purpose as long as you believe that you're worth it. So sometimes our jobs reflect our level of worthiness. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe we're
That's
in a job that totally doesn't suit us because we're not used to even finding things that suit us as people. Maybe we're in marriages that are incompatible with us because we've never been told that, oh, you matter, you deserve happiness. So sometimes our jobs are a reflection of how much we love ourselves. And so you're going to have to fix any self-worth issues too that come up along the way. Realize the ways in which you've been neglecting yourself and you don't know the extent of it until you notice how you never fought for anything that ever made you fulfilled. So there's an
yeah, that's so true.
acknowledgement.
Yes, I think that is a great point, because I have heard about it, and it's like jobs and relationships are really two telling signs, of where you are with yourself. And a lot of people, they are like, how come I change job and change the person but still the same outcome, right? It's like it's the same, it's a different guy but still the same behavior or whatever. I think it's really an internal thing that has to shift, like you said, like because if you don't feel like you deserve happiness, or you don't feel like you deserve, um, to feel a certain way, like you are going to make that not the best choices for yourself. Like even subconsciously or consciously, you're going to go for something that is not like bring the best. And you may even know this on a conscious level. Like some people complain about it, right? But they don't. The next choice they make is still the same.
Yeah. Happiness feels so unfamiliar to you that you'd rather choose the familiar toxicity than to actually fight for yourself and for a life that you enjoy. Um, it's really an interesting thing. So you actually have to go back to childhood wounds to, because oftentimes the reason why therapists get that stereotype of asking you, how are you like as a kid, is because sometimes the reason why you don't address your feelings of unworthiness is because it's very subconscious. It goes back to the time you were 10 and your mother gave away maybe your favorite toy because she thought that you weren't good enough. And she told you that. And then now it stains your entire experience of life because you internalize something that you can't even pull up anymore, but you still remember how it made you felt even though you don't remember the event. And so we have to really go back really far to undo shame and pain that goes back decades. And so when you're telling someone to follow their purpose, sometimes you're also telling them, hey, go back and address 20, 30 years of accumulated childhood wounds and disappointments throughout your entire life.
Oh my. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, because um that is so true. Like because it reflects the self-worth issue very, very much. Yeah. And it's like the same thing with relationship. Like people I know people who like put up with like verbal abuse for a really long time in a relationship. And yeah, it's like and then they go for another person with like the same traits. So it doesn't like changing the relationship doesn't really change anything or even the job unless they really like are able to accept and know they deserve better because otherwise it's going to go for like the thing that is making them miserable again.
Yeah, they're going to find themselves in a different miserable situation because they're searching out, maybe a, they are unable to let go of the angry mother they used to have. So now they just like to date angry women all the time and they're realizing, "Oh, I love women who abuse me because I haven't gotten over my mom issues." So when we're used to a treatment that people give us, we seek out the similar kind of treatment because
Mhm. Yeah.
we can look down on people or we can feel bored of a situation where people actually treat us right because we actually like the thrill of the chaos, or we feel like it's we're in a situation that matches us when people mistreat us because it's like, oh, yeah, I deserve this. This is the right scenario for me. We can get we're adaptable creatures, so we can get used to being abused. That can be
Mhm.
our new normal
Yeah.
if we make it that.
Yes. And I think a lot of people also miss like I know it sounds like it's not related to purpose, but I will bring it back. It is very related to purpose. Like I think also another area that people neglect is school, because school is also a place where we learn about ourselves from very young age, and it can start from a very young kind of school, like childcare and so on, like that. If you're not treated well in those situations, it can also be it can also cause you to have that like imprint. So it doesn't have to always be at home, even though that's also like a you know often where it is from, but it can be from other caretakers, depending on which caretaker like spent a lot of time with you and had a history.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we learn how to treat ourselves from how other people have treated us too. So I think that it all comes around full circle. So coming to terms with your purpose means coming to terms with your trauma because you won't even be able to see your purpose through the filter of your pain. Your pain will always prevent you from being able to see what makes you happy because you'll always be guided by more fear-based decision making, like, oh, I want to do the thing where people accept me because I'm afraid that they won't be okay with me, rather than doing the things that make you happy. So you really following your purpose is also finding your obstacles to why figuring out your purpose is so difficult. Like, what makes you self-cancel? Like forget about your needs and your humanity, your existence. Who taught you that looking out for your existence was wrong? That you don't matter? And so it's really kind of interesting. People die without clearing up those traumas that they faced. And so they never actually find out what their flow state is.
Yeah.
They don't get to experience that dissolution of the self, which almost feels like the happiest and purest feeling you can feel. It's almost like this childhood innocence. You know you're in your flow state because you revert back to this sparkly-eyed kid in you. Whereas like people are robbed of their innocence, or they might need to grieve the loss of their innocence if they come to terms with their trauma, because they realize, oh, I've never been able to figure out my purpose or what makes me happy or the things that make life worth living, because I have never been able to be a kid again because I've had to be an adult too soon. I have had
Yeah.
to canceled the inner kid in me to meet other people's needs or expectations.
Yeah, and it can happen very early on. So it becomes like, oh, this is the way that it should be.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree.
So when you were figuring yours out, and did you have to go through like the whole like going back to your childhood thing as well?
I did. Yeah. I had to go to trauma and I had to be like, why do I feel like I don't deserve this? I had a major case of imposter syndrome. And it is almost like the more I do what makes me happy, the more scared I get of losing it because it seems too good to be true. So
Yes,
sometimes we don't
that
want to
is
go for the
really
things that make us happy because it feels like, oh, is this a lie? Is this all fake? How can I have all these things that make me happy? It almost appears like a fantasy that it's like, how can this be real? I don't deserve these things. So I also had to come to terms with my trauma too because I was helping people with their trauma. And so if you want to actually like help people through their hurdles, you realize that you got to check yourself before you wreck yourself. And so I
the
had
rhyme.
to, yeah, I had to come to terms with my own inner turmoil to be able to help other people with it. That gives you big incentive. It's hard to do things for yourself, but it's easier to do things when you're also helping someone else. It's like almost by improving myself, I'm able to help people better. So then now I feel like I want to address my traumas more because then I can help you better. And so it's this weird mental gymnastics where you can convince yourself to take care of yourself by rationalizing it as taking better care of other people ultimately.
Yeah, it's a FE thing, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting hearing it. Did you also have to go through like therapy yourself to like help you figure out your purpose? Like, is
I
that a
did.
step that you recommend for others?
I think therapy is a really effective method, but you have to find the right therapist because they might make you feel even more disillusioned if you have
So
someone who
true.
doesn't help
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
I
because
went to a few that were like, okay, like I'm not going to open up about my history, but like back in the days, because students, we are allowed to just go for free, right? And then like I just tried, and some of them were like not very good.
yeah, I would say a lot of them are not very good. I've been
Yeah,
to a
and
lot
I'm
of
like, how come
therapists.
I feel like I can do a better job?
That's called
Because it
INFJ
was so bad. It
arrogance.
was like some of the advice was like really bad. So
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Like, I fully, wholeheartedly went through your exact experience. Most therapists are actually very ineffective, in my opinion, because I think the downside of going through so much schooling is that they use a formula to help you, and sometimes they need to have more of a examining you on a more human level and going deeper because sometimes they don't go that deep with their analysis. But there are also very good therapists too. So I'm not bashing all of therapy. If you find the right therapist, it can be life-changing because you
Yes.
need someone to be able to hold the entirety of who you are. Whether that's a friend or a counselor or a therapist, you need to be able to express the full spectrum of your thoughts and feelings to be able to get past your trauma. Because you need someone to understand how you work fundamentally so that they can speak in your language and help you get over whatever thing that you're going through. But just like you, Tori, I went to a lot of therapists and none of them went deep enough to have an impact. And but I believe it's possible. I think that it's possible to find someone who can actually really help you through your darkness, because you really actually have to confront your shadow to be the brightest version of yourself. So
Yeah, and I'm envious of people who found the right therapist, because
me
I really
too.
do believe that it's life changing. It's just that I haven't, or maybe they're just too expensive at the moment. Like
Yeah, we always
maybe that's
choose the
why it was
lowest
like my
class
budget
therapist.
that was the issue. I don't know, but it's like, how do you even identify if they're good, right? Sometimes like the pay doesn't match as well. Like it doesn't mean that because it charges a lot that they are good either. So it's hard to, But I've heard of the story of this someone who is also like going for her purpose, and her therapist really helped her because she was, working in Starbucks and she really wanted to be a writer. And I find that story to be so interesting because she like postponed every year because she was so scared of like not making it, and she just scared of like failure, like fear of not being good enough and all that. And then she like had to clear a lot of the self-doubts. So it's really an internal thing that was preventing her from going for her dream. And in the end she got accepted. So that was great. But like she went through a lot of that clearing the blocks phase. Because she had a lot of beliefs that were not helping her.
Yeah, sometimes the thing getting in the way between our purpose and is really us. So we can be our biggest roadblock in our happiness. So limiting beliefs is an important thing to address. You can do it. Or you can you can aim for the moon and land among the stars. So even if you don't get the specific thing that you want, you'll be closer to that thing than you used to be. So
Yeah, that's true. So I think it's almost time, past midnight for you. But thank you, Joyce, for this really insightful talk on finding your purpose. And obviously, it's like this topic can go on forever. I think it's like a really huge thing that a lot more people should be talking about. And even though we are not able to cover everything, but thank you for coming to this channel to talk about it. And yeah, like I would also be linking some articles that I can find on purpose, hopefully to help some people out there.
yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're also pursuing your purpose in terms of writing a book too. So yeah, shout out
Yeah,
to Tori's book.
right. So that one is still in a work in progress.
Mm,
We will see how it goes. But yeah, thank you once again. And remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.
bye.